Well, we're going to have a good conversation today. I want you to lean into the discussion like we did last time. One of the things I was really impressed with the last time we were together is just how engaged our conversation was. I was really inspired by all of you. And we're going to go a little bit deeper today and talk about something that affects each and every one of us. In addition to that, we're also going to break into groups to continue our conversation, and then we're going to come back together. But before we do all of that, I want to ask you a question. And the question is, we had a 24-hour challenge, if you remember, and I want to know if anyone actually did it. Did anybody remember what our 24-hour challenge was? Yes.
It was to stay offline, like internet.
Yeah, stay offline for 24 hours to make some space. Did anybody do it? Yes, you did it. Okay. All right. So you did that. Tell us when you did and what was it like?
I did it for a week because my mom thought it was interesting, so she wanted to do it again.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty interesting. We actually talked a lot more.
Uh-huh.
And we actually went outside. I normally don't do that much.
So you said you went a week. Okay, wow. All right. You went to a whole new level. All right. And tell me your name again. Is it Kira? Okay. My daughter's name is Kira. So that's why it's easy for me to remember. Okay, so you went a week, you talked with your mom more. What are some other things that you noticed?
I noticed I was a little less tense. I get stressed a lot, and I was just a lot less stressed.
Okay. Less stressed, more communication with mom. All right. Were there any other things that you noticed that were positive?
Instead of like immediately going on like YouTube or playing a game, I started actually baking. I made some good.
You said baking?
Yeah, I made some bomb.
Boom. Okay. Bomb food, baking, bam. Okay. What did you make?
First, I made a loaf of bread because I saw some like rustic breads and that looked cool. And then I started baking pies. They were pretty good too.
So what type of pies?
I made a blueberry pie because I like blueberries. Then I also tried to make just like a regular pumpkin pie, and I don't like those.
Okay. All right. Okay. So if you're doing the pie thing, okay, and you're taking requests for pies, all right? If you're taking requests, my request would be apple with the crumbly stuff on top, okay? Look, you know what I'm saying? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? The apple with the crumbly, that takes it to a whole nother level. Apple is awesome, but when the crumbly's on top, you know, that takes it to a level that's almost unspeakable. So you baked. Did you ever bake before?
Like during COVID, but that was about it.
Okay, so you baked, connected with your mom, you were less stressed. Were there any other things that stood out?
Not really.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that, and thank you for doing it. Do you feel like it's something that you may do in the future?
Possibly, yeah, before like tests and stuff.
Okay, all right, so good. Did anyone else? Yes.
I didn't complete the challenge, but I did do it for around 15 hours.
Okay, 15 hours. What did you notice?
Honestly, not much. After school got out, I spent most of my time outside.
Okay.
Here in the car, by the house, and just like my surroundings were really nice. But other than that, I didn't really see a change.
Okay, well, you needed 9 more hours. That's what it is. So, okay, so 24 hours, give it a shot, see what happens. Did anybody else give it a shot? Did anybody try and just said, I can't do it? Okay, so I'm going to say it again. Take 24 hours to make space for you. I know that we're in we have a habit, we're checking, we're posting, we're watching, doing all those different things, but we existed. I know it's tough to imagine. But civilization did exist prior to mobile technology. I know. So I believe that there are aspects of our person that are minimized or in some cases never expressed because we're always connected. Have you ever heard someone say, man, I'm bored, and they feel like they need to get online, they need to do whatever? There's something even to boredom that can actually be positive. It allows you to think. And so one of the things about always being connected, always being on, is that you and I are bombarded with thoughts and ideas that are not ours. Advertisements, videos, perspectives, all different things are bombarding our mind, and we are reacting to that bombardment. You've been up for a few hours, and I would say that you've already been bombarded by a lot of different things. And in order for us to create new stuff, we have to have space in order to create. And everything that's awesome had an origin story, had a beginning. And so I just want to kindly and positively and warmly encourage you to make space to think, to consider, to reflect, to assess your life, yourself. And we're going to do a little bit of that today, but I'm just saying, I know it's tough, but the fact that it's difficult is almost an indicator that it's something we probably need to do. Because if we can't do it, if somebody were to say, well, if you can't do this, man, if you're so connected to this thing, you might need to take a break on that. I would just say when it comes to mobile technology, all of us could use a break. Okay, so we're going to talk about reframing today, and the definition for, hold on a second. I need to connect this. All right. Okay. Reframing is to look at things, to see things differently from a new vantage point. Let me give a couple examples of what that might look like. Obviously, the Eiffel Tower isn't in the hand of that person, but because of the distance, it looks like it is. I don't know if you guys can read that, but perspective, right? Daryl suspected someone had once again slipped him a spoon with the concave side reversed. Do you get it? Perspective. Perspective. That's a picture of me and my youngest, me and one of my daughters. She gave me a baby face. And so I don't really like those filters, and she knows that, but she took a screenshot of it, and there's me with a baby face. Now, when it comes to being a leader, when it comes to being an influencer, when it comes to being a change maker, an influencer, it requires authenticity. And authenticity is one of those words that we often hear about, but we don't fully know what it means. So what does it mean to be authentic? Authenticity is the act of our thoughts, words, and actions aligning. Authenticity is being ourselves. One of the reasons why it's difficult to be authentic is because we are afraid of what other people might think or how they may react if we took our mask off and we were authentic. About a month or so ago, about a month and a half ago, I went to California to visit my parents. And when I went to California to visit my parents, I went to my old elementary school, which is being torn down, very, very sad. And I went to my grandparents' house. And so went to my grandparents' house on my mom's side, went to my grandparents' house on my dad's side. And so this picture right here is a screenshot of a video I did and posted to TikTok. Some of you guys are on TikTok. I'm sure a lot of you guys are. Maybe you won't be able to if it's banned or whatever. But anyway, so I went down to the street that my elementary school was on and my grandparents lived on. And so they lived about, I don't know, 10 or so minutes from the elementary school. It's funny, when you're little, things seem much bigger. And so it was funny going back to the street and it being a lot shorter distance than I thought. But I want to tell you a story about something that happened on the street where, like it says on the video, I got beat up. So let me tell you a little bit about that. When I was a little dude, I loved Charlie Brown. Now, I know that Charlie Brown isn't quite as popular nowadays as he was back in the day, but Charlie Brown was my dude. And so I not only did I love Charlie Brown, I had a Charlie Brown, what you would call a lunch pail or a lunch box. I don't know if we do those nowadays. But anyway, I would have my stuff, my sandwich, my chips, my snack, my stuff. My little thermo would be in my Charlie Brown lunch pail. So I was walking from school one day, and I was probably in the 3rd grade or so. And I'm walking, minding my own business, coming from school, and all of a sudden, when I was walking, I sensed something. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a circumstance where you felt someone's presence before you saw that person. Has that ever happened to you? Where somebody got close before you saw them, you felt them, you noticed them before you actually visually put your eyes on them. So I was walking and I sensed someone on the right side of me. And as I turned to the right to look at the person was much taller than me. And I looked up, and it was a boy, and he was looking down at me. And I was a pretty short dude at that time. And he was looking down. He probably was in the 5th or 6th grade, but extremely tall. And he was looking down at me. And the way he was looking down at me let me know that he did not have my best interest in mind. And so as I'm looking at the tall boy that's looking at me with not having my best interest in mind, I felt someone on my left side. So I turned from my right side, I looked at my left side, I looked up. It was another boy, very tall, but he looked exactly like the kid on my right side. They were twins. But as a little dude that was walking home from school to my grandparents' house, so my parents would pick me up later, I was discombobulated, all right? So both of these twin boys were looking down at me, and they did not have a kind look on their face. And what was cool is that I have a picture of the boys, all right? So I wanted to show you what they look like. They were orc boys, all right? They were orcs. They were ugly kids, and they were mean. And so the orc boys were walking next to me. And I sensed that this was not going to be a great encounter. So I started walking faster to get away from the boys. And as I walked faster, what do you think they did? What's that? They walked faster. So they walked faster because I walked faster. Then I walked faster again. And then what do you think happened? What? They walked faster. Oh my goodness, what an amazingly intelligent group. So they went faster, I went faster, then it kept going back and forth, then I just started running. When I started running, they ran after me, and then they grabbed me, threw me to the ground, and they started beating me up. So these dudes are beating me up, right? And I'm yelling, ah! All right? Now, I told you that I wasn't far from my grandparents' house. I want to pause the beating for a moment, and I want to tell you a little bit about my grandparents. So my grandparents originated from Mobile, Alabama, all right? And so they grew up in the segregated South. My grandmother's parents were sharecroppers, and sharecropping was where people that had a lineage in enslavement were no longer enslaved, but there was a process that really minimized the opportunities for black people to be economically free. And so my grandmother came out of that because of her parents. And so they moved to California in the 60s, along with my father and a lot of other families. And there were a lot of, there's a term called the Great Migration, where black people moved from the South to other parts, whether it be Detroit, whether it be Los Angeles, California, different places in the country, Chicago. So anyway, they moved, and my grandmother was a gardener. And so she, in the backyard, she had this beautiful garden, and it had vegetables, and it had tomatoes, and had cucumbers, and all sorts of different things in the garden. And then in the front of the house, she had roses, and all sorts of different flowers and things. So my grandmother was amazing like that. And so my grandmother, in addition to being a gardener who had all these different things that she, vegetables and fruit and things and roses, she also was a person that was into exercise as a more mature woman in a way that was maybe kind of, it was kind of new school. How many of you guys have ever heard of Richard Simmons? All right. Some of us have us more mature folks in the room. We remember Richard Simmons. Richard Simmons was like, on Instagram or on social media, have all the like exercise people. They're telling you to do, your crunches or whatever. He was like before that. There was Richard Simmons. There was Jane Fonda. There were people. They were doing jazzercise. They had what were the things? Leg warmers. There you go. Leg warmers. And so my grandmother, she would do that. And there was a videotape where he would do different stuff and guide you in your exercise. It was called Sweating to the Oldies. And I remember my grandmother, she would sweat to the oldies. They had this old music, and she was dancing and doing her thing as a grandma. And so my grandmother would take us on walks. And instead of getting in the car sometimes, she would say, you know what, we're going to walk to the store. And so she would take me, my sisters, my cousins, and we would walk. And my grandmother, when she would walk, she would have a stick with her. All right, she would have a stick. And the stick was kind of like Moses' staff. All right. And so she had this big old let my people go type staff. And so she would walk with this thing, and we would ask Grandma, why do you have this stick? And she'd say, listen, if somebody tries to get us, if a dog tries to come and grab us, we're going to be ready. All right? So that's my grandmother. And back to the story. I'm being beat up. I'm crying, right? My grandmother is watering her rose bushes in the front yard. All right. So my grandmother is watering the rose bushes in the front yard. I'm being beat up in the street. All right. Coming from school. My grandmother hears me yell, ah! And she recognizes that it's me. And one of the interesting things about being a parent and being a dad is that I know what a cry sounds like. I know what a cry sounds like when a little kid is like being a brat or wants some ice cream and just is upset and being irritable versus the type of cry that says you're in trouble and you need help. So my grandmother throws down the hose, reaches over the fence, grabs her "let my people go" type staff. She starts running down the road and she starts swinging that stick, and those orc boys didn't know what hit them. Now the question I want to ask you is, why did my grandmother do that? Why did my grandmother come and help me? Yes. It's her job and duty to protect me. Okay, someone else. Why did my grandmother do that? I'm sorry, I have a... All right. Why did my grandmother do that? Yes. She loves me. Good. Why did my grandmother do that? To leave an impression, she definitely did. There's a word I'm looking for. My grandmother had something with me that made her do what she did. It rhymes with relationship. My grandmother had a relationship with me, and as a result of that relationship, she came to my aid. All of us have relationships. And our relationships will determine the elevation, the height in which we're going to rise. Remember the last time we were together, we talked about living in your essence. Remember wound, fear, identity, essence? We talked about the wound or trauma that we've all experienced. We've talked about the fear that can be connected to that because of the wound that we have. We talked about the identity that we can put on, the mask that we wear. There are faults, but the essence is who we truly are under all of that, okay? So my question to you, or my thought that I want to present to you, is that your relationships, my relationships, will help determine how well, how high we elevate into the thing that is in front of us. There is 8 truths that I think I touched on last time that we were together that I want to reemphasize today. 1, you are a hero. All right. So we talked about every person having a specialness that they want to bring to the world. You have superpowers. The way that you do what you do is different than the way that I would do it. And you bring a uniqueness to the world that nobody can replicate but you. You have a cause. Your superpower is not just because it's for you to do something with it. You have villains. All of us have bad guys and different things to oppose us and resist us on the way. We have weaknesses. Every hero has weaknesses. You and I have them. We all have vulnerabilities. You and I need a refuge. You and I need a team. And you and I will have our story told by others. The one that I want to emphasize today is about a team of relationships. So, what do your relationships do for you? Do they add to you? Do they subtract from you? Do they multiply your awesomeness? Do they divide your focus? Does your relationships add? Do they subtract? Do they divide? What do your relationships equal? I'm going to pause there. Why are relationships important for us to assess? Yes?
You are who you surround yourself with.
That's good. Very good. We are who we surround ourselves with. Someone else. Why are relationships important? Yes. They influence our decisions. Yes. Someone else. Yes. That's wonderful. Good. Well said. Someone else. Yes. I'm sorry? Bettering you. That's good. I like that. Wonderful. Someone else. Yes.
Those are the people that you come to for situations. So you want reliable people.
That's good. That's good. So I want you to think about the people in your life. If something really good happened for you, who would you call? And what if something really terrible happened? Who would you call? I want you to think about those people. Do they add? Do they subtract? Do they multiply? Do they divide? What does it equal? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you break into groups, and you are going to answer those questions. Who are the people that I would call if something really good happened? Who would I call if something really bad happened? Do the people in my life, my friend group, what does it say about me? Do they add? Do they subtract? Do they multiply? Do they divide? What does it equal? And one other thing I want you to think about is who has access to you? Who has access to you? Do you know that someone can send you a message send you a text, or they can send you a message via all the different platforms that are available to us, and we don't have to respond right then? Does everybody know that? You don't have to respond right then. One of the things about this mobile world that we live in, that we feel compelled that if we get a message or somebody asks a question, we have to respond to them in a timely manner. And yes, it's nice to not wait weeks to respond, but we don't have to respond right away. And one of the things I think is important, it goes back to what I talked about, is creating space in order for us to make room for our awesomeness, is that we have to decide, you know what? Accessibility, not everybody has accessibility to me all the time, because I have to have space for me. I have to have space for me. I have to disconnect from all the stuff, because I'm talking about the relationships of the people that you have around you, and that's really important. But I believe that part of the relationships of the people around us is the relationship that we have with ourselves. One of the things I work hard at is trying to have a quiet mind. And when I have a quiet mind, I can think my own thoughts. I can create new stuff. I can consider different perspectives, but I want to have a quiet mind. In order for me to have a quiet mind, there's things that I have to do in order to be quiet. I have to disconnect from all the noise. I have to be able to chronicle my own thoughts. I'm a person who journals. I pretty much take my journal anywhere I go. I have it in my bag that I brought here. And if you're not a person who journals, I would encourage you to do that. And you say, well, I can put it on my phone. I can do it digitally. There's something powerful about actually writing it out by hand. I know that sounds crazy, old school, and maybe prehistoric, but I'm saying that some of these old school ways actually have present day and new school benefits. So journal, make space, collect your thoughts and ideas, because having a quiet mind is a mind that can move and has agility. I don't want to have a mind that's crowded. I don't want to have a mind that's cluttered. I want to have a mind, I want to have a thought process that is quiet and clear. And because of that clarity, it has impact and has power, because my thoughts are not diluted with all sorts of drama. So when you break into your groups, you're going to talk about your friend group. You're going to assess who your friend group is. Your friend group is the people that you would call if something really good or something really bad happened. Those are your people. And as you think about your people, do they add, do they subtract, do they multiply, do they divide? What does it equal? And who has access to you? All right, ready, set, go. What are some of the things that you learned that came out of your conversations? Maybe what you discovered about yourself or that you learned about those or some of the people that were in your group. What are some of your observations? Yes?
We would all call our mom.
Oh, call her mom. All right. Mom, yes. All right. Any other observations? Someone else? Yes.
My group all chose either some type of family member or a best friend.
Good. Okay. Family member, best friend. There was someone here. There was another hand here. Yes.
Some friends will like subtract from you, like not better yourself.
Some friends subtract and don't better ourselves. That's good. All right. Good. Thank you. Another observation. Yes.
Without moments that subtract or friends that subtract, friends that like add sometimes aren't as good.
Say it one more time.
Without like friends that add, I mean, I have friends that subtract from you. Sometimes friends that add to you aren't add to the person subtracting from you.
That's good. Well, you know, one of the things I was going to ask is why are we friends with friends that subtract from us? And I think one of the things that part of it is, hey, it's just fun. All right. Sometimes addition is uncomfortable. Everything that is good doesn't necessarily feel good, even if it is good. Other observations? Yes. Yeah.
A lot of us, like 95% of us, think Spider-Man. I was like,
There you go. So 95% of you chose Spider-Man.
a lot of the wanting to be highly intelligent, wanting to stay young, wanting to have the money from Iron Man.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you. What are some other observations from your conversations? Someone back here, the whispering group. Go ahead. But I know you guys whispered amongst your group, but you have to speak up a little bit louder for us to hear you. So what are some observations? You didn't know any superheroes? Okay, that's fine. What are some observations that you had about the relationships? I'm sorry, one more time. They're important. Good. Thank you. Other observations about relationships, the conversation that you had. Right here in the back. Yes.
I think it's very important to lean on family a lot and like trusting your family and that they can uplift you and that he's also that you would go to our family for like positive news, but also I think it's important to go to your family for like negative news too.
Yeah. So my question is, what if I don't have a family that does that? What do I do?
You find that support system elsewhere.
Okay, good, excellent. So yes,
I was going to say that we realize that it's kind of hard to avoid the negative friendships, like especially when you're young and in high school, like it's hard to avoid people that subtract from you.
yeah. So I'm going to say that here's me, all right? Now, we have an inner circle, an outer circle, and a extended circle. Now, there are going to be people that are pluses, minuses, dividers, all that, okay? There's nothing I can do about people in the world that are doing crazy stuff, all right? I can't do anything about that. Whether that's a person that I have a personal connection to, meaning I can see them in the real world, or it's somebody online or somebody in the cultural zeitgeist. I can't control what Kanye does. Or you know what I'm saying? And so I can't control that. I can't control what this person over here does or says. I can't control that. What I can control is the access they have to my mind. That I do have the power to control that. In a campus context, I can't control everybody. I can't control that person that is toxic in their words. I can't control that person that is cruel or mean to people. I can't control the person that's rude. I can't control the person that is bullying. I can report, but I can't control their behavior. What I can control is their access to me. And so one of the things I think is important is that we have more people that plus and multiply positive things in our inner circle, and we limit the access of those that divide or subtract from us. And that is up to us. We have the keys to those doors. We're the ones that open and close the doors and the gates. And so sometimes we don't exercise our autonomy or our power. And we just go, you know what, this person is going to do what they do. No, I don't have to talk to them. I don't have to communicate with them. If I do communicate with them, I can communicate in this context and not that one. I can do it in this setting and not this setting. I can categorize them in saying that I know who they are, at least right now. And because I know who they are, I'm not going to give them their perspective weight. So, for example, I'm sure, is it Kyrie in the pink? Maddie. Okay, where's Kyrie at? All right, what's up, Kyrie? All right, Kyrie had that left-handed, I don't know if you saw the game winner he had. That was ridiculous. Like, oh, man, wow. Anyway, I taught Kyrie that. No, I didn't. Okay, so think of it this way. Maddie, you have people in your life that are relatives that are probably younger than 5, right? Is there anybody in your life that's younger than 5 that you're connected to or related to? Yes, okay. So if, can you give me a name?
Well, I don't have any that are related to me, but like I have some that are like friends.
Okay, friends. We'll just say Tommy, all right? Tommy, 3-year-old Tommy. All right. So Tommy at 3 years old, if Tommy came to you at 3 years old and said, listen, let me tell you how to do your math homework, would you listen to Tommy? Probably not. If Tommy said, you know what, let me explain to you how to do chemistry, you probably wouldn't listen to Tommy. All right. You'd be like, wow, Tommy even knows about chemistry. But at 3 years old, there's a very small worldview. And whatever advice, wisdom that Tommy brings is not really wise. Why? Because Tommy's only 3 years old. And so I understand that I might listen to Tommy. Oh, yeah, hey, so good to see you. Oh, yeah, hey, great, you know. But I'm not going to listen to Tommy because Tommy's 3 years old. And even if Tommy thinks what he's saying is great or wise or smart or insightful, it's only 3 years old insight, so it's not that insightful. So I understand the context of what Tommy is sharing and where he's sharing it from, and I contextualize that. I may listen to it, but I'm not going to change my life depending on what Tommy is doing at 3 years old. That's the same way that we have to categorize other relationships. I have to know who it is and where they're speaking from. Because if they are untrustworthy, if they're toxic, if they're not a safe person, I'm not going to allow their perspectives ideology, or insight to have impact on me because I've categorized them with who they are. And so if we understand that, it isn't that mean things or words or whatever don't necessarily have impact, but we can lessen their impact by putting them in a category or putting them in a lane and saying, you know what, I'm not going to allow that person to have access to my mind. I'm not going to let that person or people have access to my heart. I'm not going to allow that person or people have access to my emotions. And they may act crazy or they may say a different thing, but you know what, I'm not going to take that to heart because they're not worthy of that. Questions or comments? Yes.
What about a friend who has both positive and negative traits?
That's beautiful to say, because I think we're all a big mix of different things. And I think that we're all in a process of maturity. I think that if they're a real friend, then it warrants a conversation. An honest one, and says, listen, hey, I want to tell you that I value our friendship, but I wanted to ask you something. And what I wanted to ask you is, I love when we're doing this, but when you do that, man, that puts me in a bad space. And sometimes we don't recognize what we're doing, and we need other people to help us see ourselves. Because none of us see ourselves completely. We all have blind spots. That's why we have to be in positive relationships. And so if the person is a friend and I value their friendship and I value their person, then I'm going to be honest with them and say, you know what? When you do this, this impacts me negatively. I'll tell you a quick story. There's a friend of mine. We're friends to this day. We met in high school. And he, if he was here, he would tell it a lot funnier than I am right now. But he was coming down the hallway, and he started hanging out with me and my friends. And his name is I'm not going to say his name, but he was hanging out with me and my friends, and he was cursing and using profanity. And he started up, and I stopped him. I said, hey, man, if you're going to roll with us, you can't talk like that. And he, to this very day, says how impactful that was because I set a standard and said, this is how we're going to do it. And he stopped. And I don't know if I've ever heard him use foul language since that moment. But what I'm saying is, in that particular case, I very quickly said, this is going to be the standard of relationship. These are the rules of engagement. You don't have to do that. But if you're going to be here, this is how we roll. And so I think that is a way that we can even assess our relationships and say, you know what? This is how I'm going to operate in my life. You don't have to do that because I don't have control over you. But I do have control over me, and I do have control over access to the best of my ability of those that are influencing me. So I'm going to have an honest conversation. And when I have my honest conversation, I'm going to be thoughtful about what I say. Because when I value something, I prepare for the something I value. If you were going to give a speech before the UN, if you were going to give a speech before your classmates, and it was going to be an assembly, you would prepare. You wouldn't just go, whatever. And I think sometimes because we don't prepare when it comes to some of these more honest or direct, authentic conversations, it goes bad because we don't think through what we want to say. And so what I'd say is, if I value the relationship, I'm going to think it through. I'm going to speak to this person honestly and authentically. And I'm going to come with humility. And what I mean by humility, meaning I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm going to speak about how it impacts me and what I need for me. And then that person has an opportunity to choose. If they're your real friend, I think they'll appreciate your honesty and authenticity, and it may help them level up? That's a wonderful question. Yes.
Kind of a follow-up question. What happens if you have a friend who has a very negative impact, but maybe they don't know it or they just don't have the guts to speak up for themselves? What would you do in that situation?
Okay, so run it back. It's someone who's
You have a friend who has a very negative, another friend that has a negative impact, but they don't speak up for themselves or anything like that. What would you do in that situation?
I would share my perspective with that person, and I would say, hey, listen, I really think you need to have a discussion because I don't like how you act or what you do. I don't like how that person treats you, and I think you should stand up for yourself. I think you should disconnect from that relationship, at least right now, because it's not good for you. But like I said, just like we can't control other people, you can't control your friend about how they're engaging that other person. And so you offer your perspective and then you go from there. Because ultimately, they have to make that determination and that decision for themselves. But you articulating honestly and authentically is love. Is love. It's not always easy, but I think it's worth it. Someone else? Yes.
What do we do if we have a friend who doesn't subtract or divide, subtract or?
They're kind of neutral. I think it's up to you, I'm say, hey, it's kind of, it's not vanilla or chocolate, it's not strawberry or sherbet, it's just kind of, it's just some stuff, I think it's okay to determine how you want to roll with that. That's what I would say. Any other questions, comments about relationships? So how should we assess our relationships? Meaning, if you were hiring for a job and the job was friendship or relationship with you, what are some of the requirements of that job? Yes. What's that? Being reliable. Good. I like that. Okay. Define what reliability is for you when you say that. Okay. When someone needs you, you'll be there. Good. Someone else. What are some yes? Ambitious. Tell me why that's important. That's good. Yes. Someone else. What are some requirements? Yes. Healthy mindset. Good. Okay. Tell me, define what a healthy mindset is. That's good. Good. Yes.
Good hygiene.
Good hygiene. Okay. All right. All right, here's what I will say about that. I would say yes. Here's one thing I was just going to say as a caveat in general, especially at the stage of life that all of you are in. None of us are fully formed. Okay. All of us are in progress. And so what I'm saying is we're all trying to become on the process of becoming. And so nobody has it perfect. So understand that we have to have grace and compassion for others, just like we need grace and compassion for ourselves. So yes, if my boy is like, yo, man, he's kind of, maybe he's not really into the shower thing. And so it's, hey, I care about him, right? I'm gonna pull him aside. Hey, man, Let's talk about this. I'm not going to embarrass him. I'm not going to shame him. I'm not going to do any of that because I'm not being a good friend if I do that. And so when we talk about good friendships, it's not just about someone being a great friend to us, but what type of great friend or relationship person we are to others. We have to be people that have people in our life that add to us. But are we in turn people who add to others? Someone else, what are some other things that you put? Yes?
I think that it's important for high school kids, especially, but loyalty is a big one.
Loyalty, yes.
You don't feel like you can leave the room and your friend is still going to be your friend and not.
That's good. Well said. I see people shaking their heads. Nodding their heads. Yes. Someone else. What are some things? Yes, here in the front.
Have the same morals as you.
Morals. Yes. Yes.
Like beliefs and goals, like the similar beliefs and goals as you.
Good. Thanks. You're Tom Brady, right? Okay. All right. Beliefs. Yes. Respect. That's a good one. Yes.
Willing to listen first and then give advice.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Grace.
Grace. Yes. Wow. Honest. Respectfully honest. I like that qualifier. Explain that to me. That's good. Respectfully honest. Yeah. Because have you ever heard of when people, I love respectfully honest. I don't think I've ever actually heard that phrase before. So thank you for saying, we've heard of brutally honest. You ever heard that? Well, I'm just brutally honest. Have you heard that? Do you notice that the brutally honest people love to be brutally honest, but don't want honesty? And how many wants brutal anything? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want brutal. Who wants brutality? I don't want brutality. I don't want that, all right? So I need you to be respectfully honest. I don't want you to be brutally honest because I don't want brutality in my life, all right? And it's crazy that we even have that term, brutally honest. Bro, get up out of here with that. Save your brutality for another dude. I don't want that here, all right? I need some respect, man, dang. Brutally honest. What a dumb phrase. I apologize. I'm not supposed to say dumb, I don't think. But it's not very smart. All right, we'll just say it like that. Respectfully honest. I like that. That's well said. Anyone else? Yes. Accountability. Define what you mean by accountability.
Like surrounding yourself with people who will hold you accountable and doing the same for other people, but like in a respectful way, like keeping each other in check.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you tell the other person that you're not doing what's best for them, or like what you can see on the outside that they might not be able to realize.
That's good. So I think what you're saying is so important. And we've used the word grace. We talked about respectfulness and how we share communication. And so I think it's important for us to understand that context matters in our life. What I mean by that is this. You guys are intelligent people. You guys are wonderful students. If you weren't, you wouldn't be here. And it's awesome. But how many of you in this room have had a bad day? All right? Keep your hand up. Keep your hand up. Keep it up. Keep it up. All right? So I think everybody has their hand up in some fashion. All right? So you've had a bad day. Now, on your bad day, you have maybe been a little rude or sharp or just kind of sharp with your words. All right? If that's true, put your other hand up. Okay? All right? Okay? All right? Everybody's hands are up, right? So, put your hands down. Now, would you say you're a rude person, or were you rude in a moment or moments? So, we have polite people, we have respectful people, we have empathetic people, we've got kind people, that every one of those kind, respectful, honorable people raised their hands and said, I've had a bad day, and as a result of my bad day, I kind of had a bad attitude. I was rude, I was disrespectful, I was short with my words, I didn't come off the right way. All of us have had a moment like that. And so we have to, as we assess other people, we have to give them the grace that we want for ourselves. And we have to determine, is this an episode, or is this how the show is? This is the movie. Is it an episode? Is it the movie? Is it a moment in time, or is this just how it is? How many guys have ever heard of the text and subtext? All right, for you writing students, text and subtext. Can anybody tell me what that means? What does text and subtext mean? Yes.
Text is like what's directly spoken, while subtext is like the finer details and background things.
Well said. Text is what it says. Subtext is what it means. Text is what it says. Subtext is what it means. All right? If I was going to say, hello, and I said, or no, how would we do it this way? If I said, what's up, man? That means one thing, right? If I said, what's up, man? That means something else, right? If I said, what's up, man? That means something else. If I said, what's up, man? That means something else, right? The words were the same, the meanings were different. And so what I'm saying is we have to give grace for the contextual, subtextual reality that is the variance of the human condition. What I need to do is be able to regulate my responses even when my day or things aren't going the best for me. When I can regulate my reality, my emotions, my reactions, and all those things, then I'm moving in a higher level of maturity. When you talk about accountability, let's say I'm not doing that. Let's say something happened, somebody cut in front of me, when I was driving, or somebody grabbed my latte at Starbucks and I got the wrong one and everything was crazy, and I come in to your presence acting up. And you know that's not who I am, but I'm it's like, so accountability is you saying, hey, Julian, hey, can I talk to you for a second? I assume that things didn't go well this morning for you, but man, I don't know how you realize how you're coming off. I know this isn't you, but I need you to take some time for yourself to kind of get yourself together. So I'm respectful. It's respectful honesty. It's not brutal honesty. I'm respectfully you're holding me accountable. You're not shaming me. You're not trying to dog me out. You're sitting there saying, hey, I need you to think about this, because the way your behavior is impacting others, it's not positive. And so accountability, that's what it looks like. Understanding that what I'm doing is rude, but I'm not a rude person. But because you care about me, you're going to pull me aside and say, listen, I know you're not a rude person, but you're being rude right now. And because we have a connection, I'm going to listen and be respectful, and I'm going to hear you out. And here's what I would say in general. This is for all of us. We can't just be tellers. We also have to be people that are willing to be told. It goes back to what I talked about in terms of brutal honesty. People that use brutal honesty do not like being told honest things. They just like telling honest things in a rude way. We have to be people that can be wise and share wisdom, as well as be humble enough to receive wisdom and insight from other people, even if it's uncomfortable. People that just share the uncomfortable but can't receive the uncomfortable cannot be fully trusted. Wisdom isn't just speaking wisdom. Wisdom is receiving wisdom from other people that are wise and sharing wise things. Someone else, what is on the list of qualifications for the job to be in relationship with you? Yes.
Common sense.
Common sense. You know what? I think that that term is a variable one. Because common sense isn't common for everybody, depending on the context in which you know. So for example, remember last time we were together, I talked about where people on social media take pictures of their feet, okay? Remember that. And how I think that that's completely ridiculous. You should never, ever do that. Ever, ever, ever. If that's you, stop it right now, okay? Now, we all have different sense. Here's another. We all have pet peeves, all right? So one of my pet peeves is the people taking pictures of their feet. Another pet peeve of mine is people that stack their food on top of each other, all right? I don't like that. I think that's crazy. I think it's barbaric. I think it's animalistic. I think it's beastly. I think it's just horrible. It's the worst thing ever, okay? Now, obviously, I'm exaggerating to prove a point. Now, I don't like it. For me, common sense is don't do that. But the problem sometimes, if we don't recognize that common sense can be flexible, I make my common sense more significant than your common sense if your common sense is in conflict or different than my common sense, when it's really not a right or wrong issue. If you're in this room and you stack your food on top of each other at the potluck or at the barbecue or at the picnic or whatever, or at the buffet, I guess you're not a bad person, all right? Obviously, I'm making a joke there. It's not an issue of right or wrong, it's an issue of taste and style, okay? I have specific style, you have specific style, you have different likes, you have different dislikes. And so, though I agree with you in a general sense, we have to be careful not to institute our common sense or our experience on other people that have a different experience. Can you hear that? You hear what I'm saying? And so maybe through communication, we have a set of rules of engagement in order for us to be able to move forward together in a positive relationship. Anyone else have a qualification that they would share? Yes, here and then in the front. Yeah. You. Well, whoever. Optimism. Okay. So why is that important? Yes. Yes. And here's what I will say to you is that some of us are more natural. That's more of our natural temperature. Like some people are just bouncier. Okay. You guys know who Winnie the Pooh is, right? All right. So for those of you who don't know Winnie the Pooh has a collection of friends. Okay. Winnie the Pooh loves honey and he loves eating and he's very rotund. Okay. It means the belly is kind of out there. All right. Then you have Tigger, who's always bouncy. All right. You have Tigger, right? Then you have Eeyore. Eeyore is the donkey that's always dour. All right. Then you have Rabbit, who's always critical. All right. Then you have, who's next? You have Piglet. Then you've got the owl, and you've got, is it the kangaroo mama? All right. So you have this collection of people that have different temperaments. And what's beautiful about the community of relationships that we see amongst these different animals is that even though they have different temperaments, they're all connected. And so Tigger, we're not trying to make Tigger Eeyore, and we're not trying to make Eeyore Tigger. We're not trying to make Piglet to act like Rabbit. We're not going to act like the little kangaroo mama is Pooh. And so what I'm saying is, yes, we need to have a hopeful posture, but not everybody reflects that the same way. And so we need Tiggers, we need Poohs, we need the kangaroo mama, we need some Piglets, we even need some Eeyores, all right? Because it's the perspective as we're connected in community that allows us to see things in a larger way. If you remember, we need a team. We need a team because you and I cannot accomplish our dream, our vision, our destiny, our purpose as a soloist. All of us have to be in community, and we have to be in a choir, if you will. And so, yes, I agree. We need to have a positive framing, but everybody's positive framing, sometimes it feels different. And so if everybody's bouncing around like Tigger, then there's a perspective that we don't have. So optimism, hopefulness, positiveness is important. But we also have to understand that not everybody manifests that thing the same way. And if we have room for that, then we're all right. There was someone in the front here. Yes? Empathetic. Empathetic, good. Anyone else? Yes? Flexibility, it's really important. Anyone else? That wasn't a great flexibility. Yes, Maddie. Vulnerability. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Why is it important and how would you define it?
To make yourself loyal, you have to be like vulnerable to like doing something new, like you're not loyal, you know, and like it's also just makes it better to like change and just having a tough conversation about change.
And so I think it's really, I love what you said. In order to get those things, you have to be those things. I think it's important to understand that vulnerability does not happen in a moment, it happens over time. And so real relationships happen over time because there was one group, I think over here, that talked about trust. Because I think trust is an important part of healthy relationships, but we're not going to be trusting of what's valuable to us. We're not going to be trusting with our vulnerability if we don't know if that person is safe. We're going to use that information to be able to weaponize it. And so that happens over time, where we come to realize and recognize this person is safe for me to be vulnerable with and say or share, you know what, I messed up here, or I was afraid there, or man, I missed the mark over here. That's vulnerability. But I can only be vulnerable with someone who shows value. They're not going to use that vulnerability to be able to weaponize that information and be harmful to me. And that goes back to what we talked about in relation to loyalty. You know, loyalty is standing with that person, not using that information to weaponize when that person isn't there. Just know if a person is always sharing gossip about people, there's a good chance that when you're not present, they're sharing that about you. And so just know that we have to assess our relationships or potential connections positively or properly, so we can have safe space to be vulnerable. One of the things it says about refuge, and I think a refuge is time away. I think a refuge is disconnecting from the world. I think refuge is journaling. I think a refuge is maybe taking a bike ride or having a run or going to the bookstore, whatever. But refuge is not just things or activities, it's also relationships. And people can be a refuge for us when we're in a tough place, or maybe even sharing something that's joyful. That's also a part of refuge. But I think vulnerability is an important piece, and thank you for bringing that up. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Were you going to say something? Nonverbal and verbal communication. I think that I would put that it would be adjacent to common sense. And so what I mean by that is we all have a certain commonality of culture. So for example, I spent some time overseas. And so one of the things that you learn when you spend time outside the country is that the things that you think are common sense are not common, or the things you think are universal are not universal. For example, one of the things that I learned when I was in an area of the world called Moldova, which is in formerly Soviet Union, is that in our world, you and I, culturally speaking, have a proximity indicator. So for example, if anybody steps into, let's say, a 12 to 20 inch radius around you, if you don't know them and they step into that space, you're going to do this. Everybody's going to do that. If you're out and about and somebody steps into that and you're going to go like this. Why? Because culturally we've been conditioned that 12 to 20 inch radius around me, that's my personal space. So anybody who steps into that space in our cultural context has a relationship with us. It's of a certain level of closeness or intimacy. Now, if you go to somewhere else, that isn't true. And so I remember I was on these like little bus van things. So you go and you get in there and you'd hold on to this little strap at the top and you would go to where you're going to go, right? So I go in there and there's so many people in there that there was no opportunity for personal space. And I remember I was just like, whoa, I don't want to touch anybody. I'm just like, oh my goodness. And, men, women, and children were all coming on and just like, hey, whatever. And I'm going, whoa, I don't want to, because my conditioning was this is what personal space looks like. And so what I say all that to say, verbal and nonverbal cues sometimes are different. And that's why it's important for us to be in relationships. So when I'm in a relationship, for example, one of my daughters loves to tease me about some of my mannerisms. And she likes to impersonate me. Actually, all my daughters do some impersonations. And they know if I do this or that or whatever, what that ultimately means because we've gotten to know each other. And so what I'm saying is the understanding of the verbal and nonverbal comes through relationship and that whole thing about knowing each other. And so I think it's important. I also think it has more meaning as we have a greater connection with one another. Anyone else? Okay. So we talked about relationships. We've talked about their value. We've talked about some of the things that we would say this is going to be the job description of someone that's going to be in relationship with us. my question to you is, why, if this is what we believe, do we have relationships in our life that are negative, they're subtracting, they're pulling us down rather than lifting us up? Why does that happen? Why do we allow that? Yes.
Some people are just charismatic, so they'll act a certain way in the beginning and then completely change over time.
That's good. Okay. People can change. They're charismatic and they're cool on the surface, but maybe down below that isn't sustainable. It's not sustaining. Yes. One more time. Yeah. If they leave, it's going to be different. Is that what you said? Yes? Scared. Mm-hmm. That's good. We're scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of what other people might think. Scared of being criticized. Someone else? Yes.
Like, you love them and you don't, like, the good sometimes outweighs the bad.
Uh-huh. Yep. Good outweighs the bad. None of us are perfect people. We don't always get it right every time. So it's important for us to, as we need others, we also, we want other people to do well by us. We want to do well by others. But we also have to recognize that not everybody bats 1,000 every single time. And so that's ourselves included. So it's important for us. It's a both and thing. It's humility, it's grace, it's understanding, it's empathy, it's flexibility, the things that we have listed here. Now, if someone is a repeat offender, then we have to take inventory. Someone else, why do we have negative people in our life? Yes, here? We have a history. Mm-hmm. Have a history. Yes. Familiar. So, fear, familiarity, history, charisma, all that stuff. I think it's important for us to realize and recognize, remember I talked about our relationship with ourselves. Who am I? What do I want? Where am I going? What am I about? So when I understand that, then it helps me determine who's in my circle. It helps me determine how I'm going to interact with different people. It helps me determine who I can be vulnerable with and who I'm going to put my trust in, and vice versa. And so if I get my value off of what other people are thinking, saying about me, then I might be connected to some people that are not good for me, but because I don't want to be alone and I'm afraid and all that other stuff, we got history, familiarity, I want to be popular, I want to be this, that, and the other, I want to be liked, and everybody wants to be liked, okay? Don't let everybody say, oh, I don't care what people think. Actually, I think most of us do, if not all of us. The issue is how much do we care? Like, I care, but I don't care to the point where I'm willing to abandon my convictions in order for likability. You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to trade my currency of personal conviction and direction for the currency of likability. If I have to sacrifice likability in order for me to have my convictions, I'm going to have my convictions, even if I feel a little bit sad about it. And so it's important for us to sit there and say, do I have a healthy relationship internally? Because as I'm strong on the inside, it gives me more power on the outside. For the athletes that are in the room here, you'll hear your coaches, they'll talk about, we got to strengthen your core. All right? You've heard that, right? So if I strengthen my core, I strengthen my foundation, and it gives me the ability to do X, Y, and Z at a higher level because my core and my foundation is better. It helps my back. It helps my leaping. It helps my quickness. All of that because I've strengthened my core. We have the same reality on the inside of us emotionally and intellectually and even spiritually. Am I strengthening my core? Because if my core is strong, then I can influence well, and I can also guard negative influence from influencing me because I've strengthened my core. So how do I do that? How do I strengthen my core? What are some ways that we could strengthen our core? Core being the foundation of my person. How do we strengthen our core? Yes.
Developing a new moral system.
No new moral system, or maybe even re-emphasizing the one that we have. All right. So, how do we strengthen our core? What are some actions that we could take? Yes. Setting boundaries. All right. Yes. Taking time for what? Taking time for yourself. Yes. Taking time for you. Yes. One more time. Self-reflecting. Good. That's excellent. Anyone else? How do you strengthen your core? Yes. Journaling, yes. Journaling is great. You know what's cool about journaling? And I say this as a journaler. Journaling, you can be mad in your journal and process that in a positive way. Our problem with anger is that we don't understand where anger comes from and we don't understand where to put it. So anger is always a reaction from something. I get upset about something because we don't get angry first, we get angry second. So if someone says something, someone does something, I'm hurt over that, now I'm angry in response. Now I'm angry, what do I do with that? So an unhealthy way to process anger is for me to get angry and now to dump on somebody else. A more positive way to deal with anger is to say, let me write some of my emotions down. Let me think about that. Let me record myself. Now I have the opportunity to reflect. Is my anger justified? Do I need to have a conversation? Or do I need to take a step back and say, you know what? I overreacted there. And if I did overreact, do I have the humility and the courage to go back and say, I'm sorry, I apologize, will you please forgive me? And so journaling gives me the opportunity to do a lot of that without acting crazy out in the world. So yes, journaling is awesome and positive. Someone else, how do we strengthen our core? I'll give you another one, exercise. And that exercise doesn't mean I gotta go do a marathon. Strengthen our core could be, I'm just gonna take a walk around the block and think. I'm going to take a walk around the block and I'm not going to have my earbuds in. I'm not going to be checking my phone. I'm just going to walk and I'm going to think and I'm going to reflect and I'm going to take time for me. In order for you to be the leaders and influencers that you have been earmarked, that you actually are and have the potential to become, you have to have a strong core. And having a strong core is being intentional about the core that you develop. Nobody that operates at a high level in anything, physical, mental, emotional, et cetera, has done it accidentally. They've always done it intentionally. In order for you to operate with your cause, exercising your superpowers, reflecting the heroic awesomeness that's inside of you, you have to do it on purpose, not by accident. Every once in a while, you know what, accident can, it's like, okay, fine. It's like for those of us that have played basketball, you go to the park, you go to the gym. You guys don't go to the park as much anymore. That's kind of an old school thing. But let's say you go pick up game and there's a person who just gets up there, they're just throwing up jump shots and they're going in. You ever been in the court and it's like, dude, what are you doing? Just like, what? And it's going in. Well, that's kind of like an accidental, you got fortunate, lucky one day, but you can't play well throwing up crazy stuff without fundamentals or whatever. And so we sometimes have a good lucky day and we think, hey, you know what? My fundamentals don't matter. You'll find as you continue to get more mature, the people and the communities and the groups that invest intentionally in a positive way have a better return than just kind of doing whatever. Awesome doesn't happen by accident. Awesome happens through intention. Awesome doesn't happen by accident. It happens with intention and on purpose. You are here on purpose, intention. You have a responsibility to influence others in a positive way because you have the gifting, the talent, and the ability to do it. And we in this community are asking, dare I even say, demanding for you to be that and to do it. I know we're almost out of here. Any other questions or comments about strengthening your core? Strengthening your core. Okay, I'm gonna end with a quick story. There was a teacher of mine. His name was Mr. Shaft. He was a fifth grade teacher. When I was in the fourth grade, I was in his reading group. So at the end of the day, I would go to his class and we would read. And I remember one of the books or stories that we read was was John Henry. And John Henry was this poem about this man who was a black man who had a competition with a steam engine. And when it was my turn to read, I read it as if I was in the story. I didn't read the story as if it was a story read. I read it as an experience. And so I had different voices and inflections and all this other stuff. And I was doing this as a fourth grader that was in this fifth grade reading group. And I think there might have been some other sixth graders there. And so I was reading the story. The story ended. Mr. Shaft was a more mature Caucasian gentleman. He was balding. He kind of was, maybe hadn't fully given up on the hair thing. And he was kind of brushing some stuff over. And he had some glasses, and he had been a teacher for many, many years. And I remember him getting up from his desk, standing up and pointing at me, and he says, "Julian Newman, you were sharp as a tack." And I remember as a fourth grade little dude, I didn't fully understand what that meant. What does it mean to be sharp as a tack, all right? So I wasn't sure what was going on. He went on to explain that to be sharp as a tack is to be intelligent, to be smart, to be insightful, to be quick of mind. So it was an affirmation. And I remember sitting there feeling so warm inside because of what Mr. Shaft said. And here it is, many, many years later, and I still remember that moment of him pouring into my life in such an affirming way. I bring that up because our words matter. I bring it up because how we speak to one another has impact. So speak kindly and carefully, thoughtfully and courageously, empathetically and with grace. And don't just speak that way to others, speak that way to yourself. Have you ever heard somebody make a mistake and they go, "Oh, I'm so stupid"? Have you ever heard that? You ever heard people say that? If you're a person that does that, don't do that. Don't speak to yourself rudely. You wouldn't speak to someone else rudely, then don't speak to you rudely. If you make a mistake, you drop the ball, you don't get the problem right, you don't do the thing, you say, okay, I'm gonna get it next time. I'm gonna keep going, getting at it. So even when we miss the mark, we speak of ourselves in a positive, affirming way. Our inner talk, our self-talk, the way that we see ourselves is very important, because if you and I are going to be the influencers and leaders and world-changing, culture-making people that we're supposed to be, then the way that we see ourselves is very important, and how we speak about the person that we see is very significant. So what I want to say to you, world-changing, culture-making, heroic, awesome people that have these superpowers inside of you, as you assess your relationships, what's adding, what's subtracting, what's multiplying, what's dividing, what does it equal? Does it make us greater or does it make it us lesser? Just know that you and I have to be those people even as we want those people. We have to be givers of the good as well as receivers of what we want to be good. All right? Okay, you guys have an extraordinary rest of your day. Let's keep making the world a better, more beautiful, more transformative, amazing place as a result in the investments that we make. All right? I will see you next time. I'm out.